I've been working with a Nourish dietitian for the last 6 months, and it's been life-changing. I've lost weight, healed my relationship with food, and have way more energy. Working with a dietitian online to create a personalized nutrition plan was so easy thanks to Nourish. The best part? I pay $0 out of pocket because Nourish accepts hundreds of insurance plans. 94% of patients pay $0 out of pocket. Find your dietitian at usenourish.com. That's usenourish.com.
Where'd you get those shoes? Easy. They're from DSW. Because DSW has the exact right shoes for whatever you're into right now. You know, like the sneakers that make office hours feel like happy hour. The boots that turn grocery aisles into runways. And all the styles that show off the many sides of you, from daydreamer to multitasker and everything in between. Because you do it all in really great shoes. Find a shoe for every you at your DSW store or DSW.com.
It's time to get in the zone. Time to get in the zone with the 49ers Web Zone. This is the No Huddle Podcast with Al and Brian.
What's up, faithful? You're listening to another episode of the 49ers Web Zone No Huddle Podcast, a part of the Odyssey Network. I'm Brian Renick. He's Al Sacco. It is Tuesday, December 31st, the last day of 2024, a year that the 49ers franchise would probably rather soon forget. A Super Bowl loss to start the season, or to start the year, and then a season from hell continued last night as the 49ers fell to the Detroit Lions by 6 points when Jake Moody missed 2 field goals and an extra point. If he just made those kicks, the 49ers would have won last night. Honestly, Al, I watched the first half, and then my wife and I, we had a babysitter, and so at halftime we went to go get some dinner. And granted, I was able to watch the game while I was there, but I was just unaffected by A, the 49ers playing, and then B, the game being on, and even them playing well, especially in the first half. How'd you feel last night watching that game?
Mad, angry. And I thought like you, went into the game like whatever. And as the game went on, a game I thought they were going to get destroyed. And
I did too. I thought they'd lose by 30.
Right. And they probably should have won the game, like you said. Just found myself getting angrier and angrier. And I woke up this morning and I'm even angrier. Why are you so angry, Al? Why are you so mad? Maybe it was just everything coming to a head, but feel like we've had these things in front of us for a while and we just keep making excuses and just, look, they've been to the NFC Championship game and Super Bowls, and look at the roster they've built past tense, because right now there are a lot of issues on this team and there's a lot of soul searching that has to happen this offseason. And I want to start with the defense, defense in which John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan need to sit down and have real serious discussions. Not that they typically don't, I'm sure they do, but real soul searching look in the mirror. What did we do wrong here? And there's a couple things we'll look into and talk about. But first is the coaching. Nick Sorensen, it didn't work. And I was willing to say the whole year, it's first year, see what happens. You know, Salah had some growing pains, but Nick Sorensen is in over his head, playing zone, backing up in zone in goal line situations. Guys not knowing their assignments, blowing coverages. Maybe the worst tackling team in the league are right there around there. They look like a poorly coached team. And I'm going to throw some stats out at you right now. They only have 2 turnovers that they've created in their last 8 games. Niners are negative 11 turnover differential in the last 8 games. Not coincidentally, they're 2-6 in those 8 games. The 49ers defense is
So you know what's funny about that is that Nick Sorensen's job prior to getting the defensive coordinator position was turnovers. Like that was his job. On this defense prior to becoming the defensive coordinator. Was there was a name that they had for it, and I don't remember, but basically he was the guy in charge of working on turnovers. And the fact that he became defensive coordinator and they got significantly worse at it is an indictment in and of itself.
And Brandon Staley, too. Brandon Staley's fingerprints are all over this defense to me, and he should get the hell out of here, too. But the 49ers defense has allowed a third down conversion rate of 43.4%. Only 7 teams are worse. In a red zone percentage, teams are converting 66% of the time against them. Only 3 teams are worse. The Niners have allowed 35 red zone TDs this season. Only the Cowboys and the Panthers have given up more. The Niners given up 22 rushing TDs this season. That's the second most in the NFL. And the most that they gave up since 2016, which was the Chip Kelly, Jim O'Neill year. And yeah, Sorensen's a problem. Staley's the problem. But also the personnel on this defense is a huge issue. And we were just talking about this before we came on because I was looking at the drafts. Since 2019, when they took Nick Bosa, who's been a franchise-changing player and an elite defensive lineman, they've taken 4 defensive linemen in 5 drafts. Javon Kinlaw in the first, bust. Kalia Davis in the 6th. He's a rotational piece, I guess. Sure. But, again, he's not a game changer. He's a 6th-round pick. Robert Beal in the 5th and Drake Jackson in the 2nd, who was a gigantic bust that led you into, Javon Kinlaw led you into Javon Hargrave, who was a bad free agent signing. Drake Jackson led you into Chase Young, which didn't work out, which led you into Leonard Floyd, who's been decent, but again, you're putting band-aids there. And that's all this defensive line is band-aids. Yatir Gross-Matos, Jordan Elliott, Malik Collins, Evan Anderson. I like him as a young player, but there's just a lot of band-aids on that defensive line. And again, people try to talk themselves into, and maybe we did too. Oh, well, these guys can be a good fit here. Well, Malik Collins is a pretty good player. People were actually telling themselves, well, Malik Collins had the same stats as Eric Armstead. I don't give a shit what their stats were. Go watch Eric Armstead play in his prime and look at what he did to the interior of the line, pushing the line back, opening things up for other players, making plays in the run game, and then compare him to Malik Collins. Give me a fucking break. Not that Malik Collins is a bad player. He's not. He's okay. But he's not Eric Armstead in his prime.
He's
and
a rotational player.
He's fine. He's fine.
Yeah.
But he doesn't replace a prime Eric Armstead. Give me a break. So you have a defensive line that's just a bunch of Band-Aids and Bosa that worked out the way I thought it was going to work out. And then you don't have Dre Greenlaw this year, which it makes a huge difference. But you put Devondre Campbell in there and then just keep banging your head against the wall with Devondre Campbell all year when you just see him get cooked out there all season. And D. Winters has issues. Young player. He makes mistakes. He has issues too, but at least he flies around and he's fast. Better than what Campbell could have been. And we like what the secondary brings, but even as you go into next season with the secondary, you have Lenore locked up. That's awesome. Bernardo Green's played really well, but then Javarius Ward isn't coming back. Yadam was a disaster this year. And then you look at safety. Are you bringing Hufanga back? Not unless it's on a team-friendly deal. Mustafa's look good. But then you whiffed on Jair Brown, too. Jair Brown, who was one of 9 defensive backs you've taken in the last 5 drafts, while you've ignored the defensive line. 9 defensive backs. So I hope you have a pretty good defensive backfield with how much draft resource you put into it. But the games are won in the trenches. And on the defensive side of the ball, not only do you have terrible coaching, you don't have a good defense. I don't care what people thought at the beginning of the season or if you have names there. You have Bosa and I think a healthy Warner. Warner's not healthy, obviously. You have those 2 studs. Lenore's turning into a stud, and you like what Green and Mustafa could hopefully bring. Other than that, I want to bring Greenlaw back on a team-friendly deal. You sort of show me because he wasn't healthy this season, but you do need it. If he is Dre Greenlaw, you need Dre Greenlaw, obviously. But other than that, get rid of all of them. I don't care. Start it over again because the defense is not good. The coaching is not good. What do I want to do at coaching? Call Robert Saleh. I know some people are out in the wide 9 and they want to make total. I don't think you need wholesale changes. Just bring in a familiar face. We've seen him have success here. We've seen him work well with Kyle Shanahan. He got a head coaching job out of being the 49ers defensive coordinator. He's consulting for the Packers. Pick up the phone. Just be like, dude, do you want to come back and start there?
I have a different idea, relatively in the same vein of that idea. But in my mind, one of the problems for this 49ers team is that they just continue to get poached for coaching talent, right? Especially on the offensive side of the ball, but even on the defensive side of the ball. They had a really good defensive coordinator. He got hired as a head coach. They replaced him with another really good defensive coordinator. He got hired as a head coach. There's a name out there that they tried to get this year, and I feel like could probably come in and be maybe not quite as good as Robert Saleh, but pretty much in the same vein, and that's Jeff Ulbrich.
Brian.
But here's why. A, he's not going to get a head coaching job in the
NFL.
Ever.
Or a Pee-wee head coaching job.
Right.
Ever.
And B, You saw what that defense looked like when he was there calling it before he became the head coach, and that defense started to fall apart. I think there are just some people who can't do both, right? Kyle Shanahan has shown that he can do both. There are things that we think that he needs to pay more attention to as a head coach, but he can still be the offensive play caller and the head coach of this team. There are some guys that can do it. There are some guys that cannot. Jeff Ulbrich seems like a guy that cannot, but as a defensive coordinator, he was good, right? And he is the defensive play caller. Even with Robert Saleh there, he was the defensive play caller. Mm-hmm. I think that is, and also, I don't know that Robert Saleh wants to come back, because I feel like
he may not,
and with the way that Jeff Hafley has performed in Green Bay, I would assume that he's going to keep that job after this year, which means that Saleh wouldn't have that position available with LaFleur, who is literally his best friend. Like, they were I think each of them was the best man in the other's wedding, right? Like, that's part of why he's there right now, is his relationship with LaFleur. I just don't know that he would want to come back. And we can't guarantee that he would. Now, obviously, money talks. So maybe there's that. But also, if he comes back and they do good, he's eventually probably going to get another head coaching job, because honestly, I don't think he did a terrible job in New York. I think he was screwed by his GM and by the infatuation with Aaron Rodgers and a misevaluation of Zach Wilson. You just can't overcome that. And if you're a defensive head coach, you better have somebody on the offensive side of the ball that you can count on. Look at DeMeco Ryans is getting sunk in Houston because Bobby Slowick is showing that he probably wasn't ready for the big time. So that I agree with you. The wholesale changes across the board on the defensive side of the ball. I just don't know that Robert Saleh is the answer, because I don't know that he would want that. And then B, I want to bring somebody in that might be able to stay here for 3, 4, 5 years, right? We haven't had that.
Right. I don't think Saleh's getting a head coaching job anytime soon. I think he's probably going to be a career defensive coordinator from this time out, unless he would have to be insane, but it would have to be a 3-4 year run, I think. So I think he would be here for that amount of time. But Kyle can't fuck this pick up.
Yeah.
He can't. Because he was great earlier. Saleh gets a head coaching job. Ryans gets a head coaching job. You can't do better with picking defensive coordinators.
Right.
But now they pick Steve Wilks, made Steve Wilks a scapegoat. They did. You bring in Nick Sorensen after you I guess your plan was to shoot the moon with guys you really had no chance at. Belichick is not going to be defensive coordinator for anybody.
Right.
Spags, likely wasn't leaving. So I get you're shooting
high.
They tried
to get Ulbrich.
They tried to get, that's true. They did try to get Ulbrich. So maybe they will, but I just feel like, given what a disaster the Jets have been in, and like you said, it's not fair to him to say, you're a good defensive coordinator, you're not a head coach, you're a terrible defensive coordinator from now because the head coaching didn't work out.
Right.
You're right. That's not totally fair to say. But if you bring him in and it doesn't work out, Kyle's got a big problem.
Sure.
He's got a big problem, because now you scapegoat Wilks. Sorensen's been a disaster, and the fan base is done. The fan base is done with him. The next guy you have to bring in has to be the right pick. And Saleh is the right pick, because he already was the right pick.
Yeah.
So no one can really have hindsight with that and say it was a bad decision, because he's already been here and it's already worked. If it didn't work moving forward, there's probably other reasons for it, because you've already seen it work. So I just feel like that's the safest thing for them to do. And they have to make a change. They can't bring Sorensen back, or whatever the hell Brandon Staley's doing in the back end. They just can't. And the defense needs a full upheaval. You need to go back to your roots, and we need to win in the trenches. That's where your focus has to be.
This episode is brought to you by Bleacher Report. How do you follow sports? From college football to the NBA, Bleacher Report brings you the latest news, live scores, and epic highlights from your favorite leagues, teams, and athletes, all in one app. Dive into exclusive shows hosted by your favorite athletes and original Bleacher Report series with breaking news, rumors, and predictions all season long. Download Bleacher Report to personalize your coverage.
Ryan Reynolds here for Mint Mobile. One of the perks about having 4 kids that you know about is actually getting a direct line to the big man up north. And this year, he wants you to know the best gift that you can give someone is the gift of Mint Mobile's unlimited wireless for $15 a month. Now, you don't even need to wrap it. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited. See mintmobile.com for details.
Hey, it's Austin James. Yes, I'm living with diabetes, but it doesn't have to define me. Thanks to the Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor, I get real-time glucose readings throughout the day. The Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor is small and easy to wear, giving me the freedom to focus on my life as a parent and a musician. Now this is progress. You can get a free sensor at freestylelibre.us.
Offer available for people who qualify. Visit myfreestyle.us to see all terms and conditions. Certain exclusions apply. Data on file. Abbott Diabetes Care. For prescription only. Safety info found at freestylelibre.us.
The Lions roll everybody on offense, but it was embarrassing. I mean, they're just throwing people off the line. You're gaining 8 yards of play. I mean, Gibbs, it was comical. He looks like Barry Sanders out there. And again, Gibbs is terrific.
Gibbs is good.
Often looks really good, but
yeah,
they couldn't touch him. And it was embarrassing to me.
Yeah. I mean, and you know, you brought it up, you know, before we came on, and you said that they drafted 4 defensive linemen, or was it 4 or 5, right? Since 2020. And that is mind-boggling because, you know, this regime came in saying, look, our defense is built from the front to the back. And they did that and then went, all right, we built the front. Now let's only focus on the back end. But the problem was the front started to fall apart and you had no replacements for these players. And so, you know, again, it seems crazy to me to think that is the case. But when you hear it out loud, you're like, wow, that really did. They really did get away from the foundation of their, of their philosophy on defense. And so that is going to have to change. But the problem is that they need help on both sides of the line. And, it's going to be difficult to do that in just one draft. And then the other issue is, and we're going to get there, is the Brock Purdy and the contract issue. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, there are wholesale changes that need to happen on the defensive side of the ball. And they need to bring somebody in that Kyle Shanahan can just say, this is yours, and then not have to worry about the defense anymore. Because that's the other thing, is one of the questions you have to look at is, wow, the offense looked incredible last year. We know that it did not look great this year, but we also know that Kyle, especially towards the end of the last season, started spending a lot more time in the defensive planning areas than he ever did before with Steve Wilkes. And I have to imagine that he probably has done the same with Nick Sorensen, unless he has left that up to Brandon Staley. And maybe he has, I don't know. But, you would really like, again, Kyle Shanahan to just be like, all right, this is your side of the ball. I don't even have to concern myself with it. I trust you implicitly. And I think you would get that with, obviously with Robert Saleh, because we've seen it. I think you'd get it with Jeff Ulbrich as well. Just because, again, you're bringing somebody in with a wealth of experience running your system, but also just being a defensive play caller in the NFL. And so, yeah, that, I mean, 100%, I am in lockstep with you on that one.
And you look at their drafts, it almost feels like they were just picking for, hey, we need this guy. So like you go to 2023,
which is how you don't want to draft.
Exactly. The way you don't do it. Oh, we need a safety. Well, let's take Jerry Brown. We don't have a kicker. Let's take Jake Moody in the third round, which is turning out to be an absolute disaster of a draft pick. We need a tight end. Let's take Cam Latu, who's basically out of the league right now. And even going back to this year with a draft class that we like, second round, Renardo Green, the right pick was to trade up for Roger Rosengarten and jump the Ravens. That was the right thing to do. And you get Rosengarten and Pooney, I mean, all of a sudden, for that offensive line, I'm feeling pretty damn good about the future. And I like Green at the corner, but again, you've taken 9 corners the last 5 years.
Yeah.
You have a stud in Lenore. Like, for the most part, you don't win on the back end. Is it nice to have really good coverage? Absolutely. But I'd rather win with the front 7, have a crazy pass rush, be good in the trenches. So you're picking some of these again, it was a good draft this year, but wide receiver, defensive back, offensive line, Purdy, great. Defensive back, running back, wide receiver. Where are the trenches there? The previous draft, safety, kicker, tight end, cornerback, linebacker, tight end, wide receiver, safety. Where are your trenches? Mm-hmm. It's just, you've just over and over again, we're just seeing them ignore it or take late round flyers like a Nick Zakel when you're taking a TDP and a Danny Gray in the third round. Luxury picks. What are you doing? And it almost feels in a way like what Trent Baalke did those years when he had to replenish that core. And he was doing whatever the hell he was doing. He was drafting. He took 1 million corners too. Mm-hmm. The Niners have really done that over this since I think that the Javon Kinlaw draft, they had the right idea. They had 2 firsts, a 5th, a 6th, and a 7th that year. They took a defensive tackle in Kinlaw. It didn't work out. They take Ayuk, who's, was a stud wide receiver. McKivitz, who's been a starting right tackle for them in the 5th round. That's a tremendous pick. Mm-hmm. Charlie Warner was a good backup tight end.
And a great blocking tight end.
Great blocking tight end in the 6th round, and Juwan Jennings in the 7th round. That's a great draft other than Kinlaw. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But then after that, it's been atrocious, starting with that Trey Lance draft. It's like they've totally lost their way in what they're trying to do in the last 4 drafts. And again, we like the pieces. I will go to my deathbed saying this. I really like the pieces that they got in this last draft. And I think they probably have 4 starters here, maybe 5. I'd say 4 starters. But which of those guys is an all-pro Hall of Fame, George Kittle, Fred Warner, Nick Bosa type dude? None of them probably are.
At a premium position, right? Like
premium position.
Dominic Puni has been this season one of the best guards in the NFL. Again, when you look at PFF, when you look at all that, right? Like he has been one of the best guards in the NFL. He could end up being an all-pro, but we're talking about an all-pro at guard, which is not typically a position of importance. Although, if the plan is to stick with Brock Purdy, I talked about this all offseason. Sure. I think you beef up the interior of the offensive line because you have a short quarterback. So maybe that is a position of value for this team with a quarterback who's 6'1", right? Now, if you have a quarterback who's 6'4", maybe that's not as big a deal, right? Even though it has been a big deal in the Super Bowl when Chris Jones has wrecked your game both times you played the Chiefs. But under your point is taken. Again, you may have drafted starters, but not all-pro players at important positions. The last all-pro player that you drafted at a premium position is Nick Bosa, who you fell ass backwards into because the Cardinals took Kyler Murray first and you got to take Nick Bosa second. Again, that's not, you don't get credit for that. You don't get credit for Nick Bosa. You didn't do anything to get Nick Bosa, right? It's not that you right? Like to me, the last player, I guess you could argue Diamador Lenore is the most recent player where you're like, you can get credit for that. A 5th round pick
is a great pick
who's now, playing at arguably an all-pro level. And then before that, Fred Warner in the 3rd round, Nick Bosa in the 5th round, right? But other than that, again, it's Nick Bosa, and you just fell ass backwards into it.
Yeah, and it's at some point that it just has
and Brock
to
Purdy.
Change. And Brock Purdy as well, sure.
Come join me, Andrew Filipponi.
And me, Patrick Peterson, 3-time NFL All-Pro cornerback on First and Pod for premier NFL coverage and conversations.
Our motto on the podcast is every team, every week, and we don't play favorites. Every episode, you get a glimpse of the entire National Football League with First and Pod. Follow and listen to First and Pod on Mondays and Fridays on the free Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts.
What's better than watching your team win? Winning money while you do it. I'm Jim Costa, and on Cash the Ticket, Mike Valenti and I give you the edge to make every game playable. College football, NFL, we're breaking it all down game by game. Your podcast feed is going to be filled and you're going to love it. You can click on the games you care about. We do it all. With our analysis, we're finding games that other people aren't talking about. We're turning every Saturday and every Sunday into days where you got a chance to win. Don't just sit on the sidelines. Cash the ticket with us. Follow Cash the Ticket in the free Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Let's transition, I guess, into the Purdy, because I know a lot of people are frustrated with him. And the last 2 weeks, I think he's played exceptionally well. He was tremendous in the first half last night, except for like three throws. And they just happened to be at critical times at the end of games and interceptions. It's not like he one-hopped an open receiver in the second quarter. These are critical interceptions, which he's done over and over again. When it's late in the game and 4 minutes left and it's a close game, I have my hands over my eyes when he's dropping back to throw now, because you're like, where is this one going to end up? That is worrisome. Having said that, we went over it a couple shows ago. We've seen second-year QBs regress, whether it's Lamar Jackson or Dak Prescott or Jalen Hurts. In their second full year of starting, they've regressed. CJ Stroud this year. So it does happen. I'm not ready to cut the cord on Purdy by any stretch of the imagination. Here's where I am with Purdy. The contract complicates things because I need to see another season. Even with the way he's played this year, to me, he's still in that Tua range, right? Where he hasn't played like a top 10 QB, but he's not a guy you're going to replace, because what's the alternative? And I put out a tweet today. If you're out on Brock Purdy and you want to move on, what is your alternative? A lot of people give me their opinions. Not one person has given me an alternative, because there is none. Let me throw out
a scenario for you. Ready?
Okay.
This could be a possible answer to your question. What is your alternative? So again, there is not a ready-made alternative, meaning there isn't somebody that you could bring in. Kirk Cousins, not the answer. Sam Darnold, likely going to either get franchised by Minnesota or signed to a long-term extension by Minnesota. So here's the scenario I throw out to you, right? Don't know if Brock Purdy is the answer. One of the things that has made Brock Purdy incredibly valuable is that he's been a rookie quarterback on a rookie contract, right? It has allowed the team to, continue to pay the likes of Trent Williams, Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, Nick Bosa, right? If the Vikings are willing, would you trade whatever pick they end up with in the first round? I think the highest it can be is 11. Would you trade 11 to the Vikings for JJ McCarthy? And now you have a rookie quarterback,
right? You could
restart on a rookie deal,
right?
And you just restart the clock.
If they love him, if they think he's a high level guy, but here's the thing: I don't trust their evaluation. I don't trust Kyle Shanahan's evaluation in quarterbacks.
Fair.
Look at what he's done. So to start, this is year 9 we're going into. Okay. Well, we're not really, and they came out there. They said this. I didn't. We're not really gonna put that much effort into evaluating Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson, who had a really good start to his career. Even Mitch Trubisky, because we're going to wait for Kirk Cousins. We're going to sign Kirk Cousins next year, and we're just doing placeholder this year. But then we're going to trade for Jimmy Garoppolo. If he's our franchise quarterback, you know what? Maybe he's not our franchise quarterback. We're gonna make the biggest trade in franchise history, and we're going to trade up for a quarterback. Well, who do you got in mind? I don't know. One of them. They take Trey Lance, maybe the biggest bust, one of the biggest busts in NFL history. And then you fall ass backwards into Purdy. So if Purdy is not your guy, you're going on franchise QB number 4 right now, 5, whatever it is. And I'm going to trust that evaluation that you think JJ McCarthy is the guy. What is JJ McCarthy's just Brock Purdy in 2 years? Are we just going to keep doing that over and over and over and over again? I think the issue is the contract. What should happen is a Geno Smith, Daniel Jones situation where you basically get a 2 or 3 year extension that you can get out of for 3 years, $120 million. Again, this is me. Perfect scenario. It's not going to happen. But 3 years, $120 million, you have an out after a year or two. it's structured in a way where you can get out of it. And if he plays well, he's making $40 million a year. If he doesn't, and then he'll be 28 and he can get another huge contract if he plays really well. That's what they should do. That's what in a perfect world should happen. That probably Purdy likely will not do that. So you're going to be in a situation where you have to make a decision. Now, here's the thing with quarterbacks that I don't think people understand. Sorry if I'm ranting a little bit. There's four dudes that you're not going to have this issue in some way with. Lamar, Allen, Mahomes, Burrow. That's it to me. Everybody else, you need some kind of a balance. When you drop back 10 times in a row, like they did against the Lions, most quarterbacks are going to get exposed or maybe have a bad throw when you don't have balance.
I still think Herbert's in that group, by the way. I think there's 5. I think Herbert is in that group.
I think he can get there. I think he can get there. He physically certainly is. He's got a good head coach. We'll see. But okay, even if you want to say maybe 5, you can trust that guy to do it. That's it.
Right.
Dak Prescott is, regardless of what anyone thinks of him, but he is a legitimate, will start in the league for the rest of his career, right? He is a legitimate starting quarterback. Purdy is in that.
Right.
He's right there with Dak. Tua, as long as he is healthy, is going to start in the NFL. Purdy's in there. I mean, Tua's got his flaws. Tua single-handedly lost them a game a couple weeks ago. I forget who they played now, but he single-handedly lost them the game with 2 picks. He was horrible, but he's not going anywhere. Trevor Lawrence, again, he makes $50-something million. He's going to start in the league, and he sucks. So, like, I mean, that's where you are. That's the market. Jordan Love, what do you throw for against the Vikings? What do you have, 64 yards going into the fourth quarter?
Yeah.
You're going to get that with these kind of QBs. And with Purdy, if they're like, people are like, well, you're never going to win a championship with him. You did almost. You did almost win a championship with him. If
everything went perfect.
Right. If Jake Purdy makes his kicks, if you don't muff the punt, Purdy wasn't great in the game, but did he play well enough to win? He did. He didn't fumble inside the 20. Christian McCaffrey did.
Yeah.
So you almost win. And I'm not saying he's perfect. He's got his flaws, and those late interceptions worry the hell out of me. But before you're going to say, just get rid of him. He still threw for almost 4,000. Say he doesn't play this week because his elbow, whatever's going on with his elbow.
That's another concern, by the way.
Yeah, he keeps getting arm injuries. But I think this just sounded like a stinger to me, unless something else comes out. Where you hit your funny bone and you go numb type thing. But if he plays this week, he's going to throw for 4,000 yards again. He'll be the only 49er quarterback in history to throw for 4,000 yards 2 seasons in a row. He has the most yards in back-to-back seasons, 8,144 in 49ers history. Young had 7,990 something in 93 and 94. And before you say, well, Purdy played more games. No, he didn't. Purdy's played 31 games the last 2 years. Young played 32. Now, Purdy is nowhere on Steve Young's level. I'm just saying Purdy's been prolific in terms of his numbers. He's throwing 51 touchdown passes. His interception percentage has been exactly the same for all 3 seasons he started. It's about 2.4, 2.5. So there's no difference there. That's what you get you're going to get some errant throws. And you're also in a situation where he's in his second season. There are sophomore slumps with these QBs. We mentioned it already. It happens. They've all been through it. Stroud, Hurts, sophomore slumps in terms of their full second year starting. Right. Dak went through it. Lamar went through it. Lamar had 16 TDs and 13 interceptions his second full year starting. What is he, 40-3 right now with interceptions or something ridiculous? Dak, Hurts, all of them had a lot of interceptions their second year. Now, I don't know if Purdy's gonna bounce back from this and continue to grow and be a really good quarterback. Nobody does until we see what year 3 looks like. But to just cut bait when you look at the quarterbacks around the league, I get you don't want to pay him $60 million. Neither do I. But you got to find a way to make it work. Because if you just cut bait and say, yeah, we'll just bring somebody in. Well, you haven't been able to find a quarterback in 8 years, and you fell into him. And go look around the league. Someone would trade for Brock Purdy in 2 seconds. Look at the quarterbacks around the league. Purdy's absolutely a starter. Probably in the top half or ish.
So that's so again, therein lies the question, right? Like, again, just approaching this idea of if JJ McCarthy is available, right? And obviously the Vikings would have to make him available for any of this to work. But you're right. I think that you could probably trade 11 for McCarthy, but then trade Purdy for another first round pick, going to a team that then signs Purdy long term. Obviously, that's that would be, that team that gives you the first round pick is probably going to have some guarantees that, like, hey, Brock is going to sign an extension with us or whatever.
Right.
And I don't, maybe there aren't, and that's the other, like you said, there are teams out there. Maybe there are, maybe there aren't. I don't know. We don't know what the league thinks of Brock Purdy. We don't know whether the league thinks, hey, Brock Purdy is a product of the Kyle Shanahan offensive system. And if we bring him into our system, but here's the other thing. Look at the success of Sam Darnold. Look at the success of Baker Mayfield. Look at the success of Geno Smith. Look at this. There's another one that I think I'm missing. But these quarterbacks that were jettisoned by their original team and have found landing spots with Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota and Liam Cohen. And to be fair, also Dave Canales last year, right? I think Canales has a good amount of success with Baker Mayfield. Like a lot of Baker Mayfield success, has to be attributed to Dave Canales as well. But some of these guys that were like abject disasters in their first stops, find a home. And so, again, do you want to be the 49ers and go, you know what? We don't want to pay Brock. We're stuck. We think he's worth this much. Rightfully so. He's coming into any negotiation going, I have a better resume than Tua. I have a better resume than Jordan Love. I have a better resume than Trevor Lawrence. All three of those guys are making $55 million a year. I'm not taking a penny less than that. He has every right to come and should go into any negotiation saying that. But then as the 49ers, you have to go, are we comfortable paying this guy $55 million? I don't know that they should be. I don't know that they are. But he should. That's the contract he's earned based on the market. So then you have to either have the stones to say, look, I know this is the market. We're not comfortable with that. We're going to pivot, or you pay it. Like those are your two options, right? You don't, there's not a Daniel Jones option. There's not a, there's, you can't even franchise this guy, right? Because he still has 1 year left, but there's no chance that after 3 arm injuries now, again, we don't know what this one is. Maybe it is just a stinger, but there's no way that he's stepping on the field next year without a new contract. Right. And if I was Brock Purdy, I wouldn't do that.
Right.
And again, every right to do so.
Yeah.
So
we're talking in a perfect world as fans, but him as a business person and a player, there's no way he's doing that.
So I really feel like as much as the 49ers are in the same situation as the Giants with Daniel Jones, or even the Seahawks with Geno Smith, there isn't a world where they can just say, so let's find some middle ground. Here's 3 years, $120 million with an out after 2 years or whatever. Because if I'm Brock Purdy, I say, no, I'm not taking that.
Right.
I'm just not, because there's no reason why you're not offering me the same contract as these guys that I have proved more than since being in the league. So it is a really unique situation, and it's one that I'm pretty intrigued by when it comes to what they're going to do, because like you said, there aren't a lot of good options. There are some options, but a lot of them are probably going to be unpopular with the fan base. The JJ
Other than
McCarthy thing,
I think that's the only one that would be somewhat popular with fan base.
Yeah.
Where they could say, like, okay, you got this kid, his first round pick, maybe he's going to be a stud. We're going to reset the window with the rookie QB contract, which is a way the 49ers have done things.
Sure.
Versus you bring in a Kirk Cousins, you bring in a Russell Wilson. Nobody, because
the one thing that JJ McCarthy does have over Brock Purdy is more physical tools. He's a bigger kid, stronger arm, all that stuff.
And in Purdy's defense as well. And again, I'm playing devil's advocate here. I'm not excusing his interceptions. There's been issues this year. I'm not saying there hasn't been. He's playing behind a bad offensive line. He's on his 5th string running back. his receivers are Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall, because Deebo Samuel is just Cordell Patterson at this point. He's a kick returner who catches a few short passes, I guess. He's not Deebo Samuel anymore. You haven't had Brandon Ayuk. George Kittle's had a great year. But there's not a huge supporting cast. So, okay, somebody listening to the show, as I just said, said, oh, so he needs everything to be perfect, Al? Almost every quarterback does.
Yes.
Again,
yes.
Unless you have those 4 or 5 guys,
yeah.
You have to have balance and you have to have good things around them. One of the reasons Sam Darnold is having the year he's having a great year. He's got a good offensive line. He has Aaron Jones. He has Jordan Addison. He has Justin Jefferson. He has TJ Hawkinson. And they've been there. Hawkinson came back late in the year, but they've been healthy for a lot of the season. Justin Jefferson is so good that he opens things up for everybody else. Guys like Naylor and other dudes on their team who are getting big catches because that guy draws so much attention. So, yeah, Sam Darnold is in maybe one of the best spots in the NFL. Thinking about it. I mean, would you say they're a top 5 offense, a top 5 spot for QB? I would, with Kevin O'Connell.
Yeah, with Kevin O'Connell, with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, with TJ Hawkinson, with Aaron Jones, with a really good offensive line. Their left tackle went down in week 6, I think. It was early in the season they lost Darisaw, and they've been able to withstand that. So that offensive line is just prepared to get better with Darisaw coming back as well. So yeah, it is
Sam
definitely an elite spot to be for a quarterback.
He should apologize to no one for having a great season.
No, absolutely not.
You have great players around you, and you had a great season. Great, but most quarterbacks need that. And you say, oh, well, I don't want it. Then he's not a franchise guy. I don't want to pay him. But that's the going rate. That's what these guys get paid. So you either keep trying to reset it, which is incredibly difficult to do because we see how many misses there are, and we see how many times the Niners have missed. Or you stay with Purdy and say, okay, we have one with him. We know we can win with what he does. We just need to have balance around him or whatever and go with it that way. So we'll see what's going to happen. But I think, again, if you're McCarthy's probably the only thing I've heard where I would say, okay,
maybe.
Yeah, I would pause and really think about that and say, okay, I can see where you're coming from here. Now,
hold on real quick. Real quick. So I said what I said about JJ McCarthy being a little bit more physically gifted. And so I was like, well, you know what? I need to look that up. Right. So I went to Mock Draftable and looked up his measurables. You know who JJ McCarthy is? JJ McCarthy is Jimmy Garoppolo with a 1/4 inch smaller hand. That's what JJ McCarthy is. JJ McCarthy is 6'2.5", 219 pounds. He has a 9-inch hand size, which is also a 1/4 inch smaller than Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy and Jimmy Garoppolo had the same hand measurement. Jimmy Garoppolo was 6'2", 226 pounds with a 9 1/4 inch hand. No 40-yard dash number for JJ McCarthy. So I don't know where his speed is, but an elite 3-cone drill. So he's mobile in that regard. But so maybe, I don't know, maybe JJ McCarthy isn't as much of a physical upgrade as initially thought. I don't know.
Well, we're going to find out with what they want to do, not only at quarterback, not only at defense. This is just a gigantic offseason. And it's frustrating because we talked going into last offseason. Well, we don't have to talk about the quarterback this year.
Right.
And here we are a year later.
You got it one offseason.
One offseason. It's going to be another huge topic. Another thing Purdy did too, I forgot to mention this stat. He's got 20 TD passes. He's the first quarterback, and this is more a pathetic stat, but he's the first quarterback since Jeff Garcia for the 49ers to have back-to-back seasons of 20-plus touchdown passes.
That's rough.
In 20-plus years. So
that's rough.
Yeah, he has had some arm issues, but he's been relatively healthy for 2 seasons. He's been prolific in terms of numbers for 2 seasons. And it's been the tale of 2 seasons for me from this year because I thought he was really good the first half of the year. He had a couple stinkers in there, but for the most part, I thought he played some really good games. And then he went in the tank where he didn't play well 4 or 5 weeks, or maybe 4 out of 5 weeks or something like that. There was some shoulder stuff going on. And like I said, these last 2 weeks, I thought he's played really well with the exception of a few throws, which were monumental throws.
Yeah.
but he did a lot of very good things too. So is it things you can clean up as a young quarterback? Maybe you can. That's the other thing that people have to consider is this is a young QB still.
Right.
But look, it's huge. It's a lot for Kyle too, because at some point Kyle's legacy, you got to figure out a QB, man. You can't keep shuffling through QBs every 2 years and call yourself well, not that he's calling himself that, but people call you a QB guru and an offensive genius and all these other things when you can't develop a quarterback when you're moving on from a quarterback every 2 years. That's got to change at some point too.
Well, and if you invest in Brock Purdy, you better damn well invest in the interior of the offensive line as well.
Yeah.
Dominic Pooney, home run. Bring in a new center, whether that be a guy that you sign. I think Drew Dahlman is going to be a free agent. I think there's another center that would be an upgrade over Brendel, which isn't hard to be. Or again, in the draft, which they should have been doing anyway. And then, I'm sorry, Nick Zakelj is better than Aaron Banks. Ben Bartch is better than Aaron Banks. Spencer Burford is better than Aaron Banks. Do not bring Aaron Banks back. He is done in the red and gold. And if you can find an upgrade there, again in the draft, whatever, or go with a Bartch or a Zakelj because they seem to play well in the time that they were in there. But Aaron Banks, bye-bye. And yeah, invest in the interior of the offensive line. Keep that pressure out of Brock's face because, again, you've got a 6 foot, maybe 6'1" quarterback. Help your quarterback out. Interior offensive line, defensive line across the board. Find an heir apparent at left tackle. Replenish. Because if you're paying Brock Purdy, you need cheap talent, and you got to hit in the draft.
Buckle up. It's going to be a crazy, crazy offseason. They always are with the Niners, but this one even more so is going to be insane. All right, I got nothing else, Brian. You got anything else?
I do not. We have, thankfully, one game left in this dreadful 49er season. And then all we're going to be able to talk about is what moves are the 49ers going to make to get back to the playoffs next year. And I'll be perfectly honest, my favorite mode in Madden has always been franchise mode, right? I like playing GM. So maybe this will be more exciting for me than this dog shit season. So at least I have that to look forward to.
That's all we got. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Later.
Niners on 3. 1, 2, 3. Niners!
2400 Sports is an Odyssey company.